is the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew.
It's been just over 3 years since Suzanne Morphew disappeared on Mother's Day, never to be seen again.
That she wouldn't feel safe at home once her youngest daughter grew up and moved out.
The Unbelievable Betrayal is indeed a timeline of events, as the perfect life of a Colorado mom ended when she went missing mysteriously, and no one could find her until a clue came up. On the other hand, as part of a different probe, it brought the famously cold case of her disappearance to reality. What happened to Colorado's mom during her disappearance? Who was behind it? Join us as we unravel a story full of deceit and betrayal. This is Solved Files, where crime stories are brought to your doorstep. What are you waiting for? Just hit the subscribe button for more fascinating and suspense-filled crime stories. Now, let's get back into this story and uncover this mystery. The picture perfect of Suzanne and Barry Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born to Jean and Adrian Alexandria on April 11, 1971. She was raised alongside her two siblings, Andrew and David. Suzanne was regarded by everybody who knew her as a beautiful, prudent, and considerate friend. Suzanne met her husband, Barry Morphew, in high school in 1998, and after 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry was a fantastic football player who signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, and Suzanne attended Purdue University to get her degree in education. Unfortunately, a devastating accident cut short Barry's career before it had even begun, and he decided to pursue a career in horticulture instead. Suzanne had been a teacher for 4 years while Barry launched his landscaping business, which grew in popularity over time. The couple had Mallory and Macy as their 2 children together. Their life in Indiana was blissful until Suzanne received the news that she had Hodgkin's lymphoma. After she overcame cancer twice, the Morphew family relocated to Mobile, Colorado in 2018 to have a fresh start and be closer to their daughter Mallory, who was attending Western State University. They relocated to a stunning 7-acre estate where Barry could go hunting. While Suzanne retired from teaching and focused more on her faith and newfound interest in mountain biking, Steve continued working as a contractor and became a volunteer firefighter. Meanwhile, the Morphews appeared to be the ideal family from the outside, but they had several issues that would eventually come to light. With all the beautiful pictures painted of the Morphews, their lives were about to experience a dark turn as eventually a horrifying event took place: the sudden disappearance. During that time, it was Mother's Day 2020, and at the Morphews' home, everything began differently than other Mother's Day celebrations. Suzanne was alone in the house when Barry and the girls left. Meanwhile, Barry claimed he had to drive 3 hours to Broomfield for a landscaping appointment, which was his explanation. The girls, on the other hand, went camping. Barry and the daughters were supposed to get home by nightfall to celebrate Mother's Day with Suzanne, but that never happened. Instead, the girls texted their mother that evening to wish her a happy Mother's Day, but they received no reply to their text message. They thought this was strange because their mother was highly active on social media, and they knew she had to be on her phone because they were expecting a few photos of her best friend's daughter's wedding. When they heard nothing from their mother, Suzanne, they contacted their neighbor, Martin, and his wife. When Mrs. Rita arrived at the Morphews' home between 4:30 and 40 p.m., she found it empty, and this was where everything changed in their lives completely. But where could Susan have gone to? The search for Susan. Upon calling Barry to clarify the situation, he instructed her to locate Susan's mountain bike. He told her to call the police if it wasn't there, and she followed his instructions. Barry Morphew and his 2 daughters returned home when the police arrived at their house, eager to find out Susan's whereabouts and condition. A few hours into the search, the police discovered their first conclusive lead. The investigation was thrown for a loop when 2 deputies discovered Susan's mountain bike off a steep ravine near Morphew's house. However, the position implied that Suzanne had probably been in a collision, but there were no indications of a struggle on the bike or in the nearby greenery. Despite crashing down the edge of a ravine, there were no skid marks indicating she applied her brakes, no damage to the mountain bike itself, no blood, and the surrounding foliage was undisturbed. Still, the deputies concluded that someone had clearly placed it there. Barry reacted strangely when they told him this information. The first of many bizarre theories, explanations, and tales Barry provided the detectives while looking for his wife was his odd mountain lion theory. To put it mildly, several individuals thought Barry unusually caused his wife's disappearance. But how was he responsible for his wife's disappearance? That's one question we will need to find out. However, in any case, he discussed his mountain lion tale in more detail during a covertly filmed chat with YouTuber Tyson Draper. Nevertheless, Suzanne's brother Andrew organized search parties, but Barry did not attend. Andrew hypothesized that Suzanne might have been kidnapped on May 9th instead of Mother's Day, not believing Barry's account of the bike ride. When Suzanne's helmet was discovered a mile from Morphew's house, exactly in the same direction that Barry's truck's telemetry indicated he had driven that morning, suspicion finally turned to him. Investigators might have dismissed it as a strange coincidence if it had not been in the opposite direction of the Broomfield construction site that he was scheduled to attend that day. He informed the cops during the initial interview that he woke up at 4:30 a.m. and immediately headed to Broomfield. However, his Ford F-300's telematic data revealed that he had traveled 1 mile west before arriving at the construction site. Barry offered a convenient defense when presented with the collected data. At about 4:30 a.m., he claimed to have been scouting elk and wanted to know where they were going so he could find them later. Why exactly was Barry twisting the case? Does he have a hand in the disappearance of his wife? Was he the one who planned it all? Barry made it a habit to tranquilize elk and remove their antlers for commercial purposes. He changed his narrative to claim that he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 and got up alone after the officers pointed out that he couldn't have observed the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was only supposed to be waking up. When pressed directly about the day before she vanished, he claimed it was the nicest night they had had in a long time. Barry reported that he had spent the morning working with a colleague in Salita, returned early, and went hiking with Suzanne. They shared a private moment while grilling some steak. He said that they went to bed together, but Barry is not the most trustworthy witness, as we have seen. Barry had lied to the police about everything that had happened that evening. They discovered this when they began their investigation. When the detectives looked through the telematic data from Barry's phone and car on May 9th, 2020, they realized something wasn't right. Barry spent the afternoon and evening with Suzanne Morphew, but the facts did not support Barry's account. The first notable divergence from Barry's story appeared shortly after. The movements on the property were sporadic, according to his phone data. He told detectives he was probably using tranquilizers to hunt chipmunks when they met him. Barry put his phone on airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it there until 10:17 p.m. Investigators discovered only one filthy dish, not the two they had claimed to have found, casting doubt on even the steak meal he claimed to have had with his wife. Later that evening, other oddities on the Morphew's land surfaced. When the police examined the data later that night, they discovered more alarming information. An hour after Barry claimed to have fallen asleep with his wife at 9:30 p.m., his car flipped over and moved 96F backward out of the driveway. If he was guilty, investigators surmised that this might have happened when he carried her body aboard his truck. According to the statistics, his truck's door opened and closed more than 80 times between 3:25 and 3:48 in the morning. The circumstantial evidence raised questions about what Barry was withholding from the police and made investigating what happened on May 10th more necessary. Interviews with co-workers, however, showed that Barry did not intend to be in Broomfield on that particular day. Their contract wasn't supposed to start for another week, thus, there weren't any projects to check. Barry claims he went to the neighborhood store, Holiday Inn, for water and granola, and only quickly stopped at McDonald's to clean his windshield. His account was refuted by surveillance footage that the Colorado Bureau of Investigations was able to obtain. Barry was removing 5 trash bags close to the festivities and McDonald's. Barry explained his disposal technique peculiarly after he saw the video, saying he wanted to clean his car without paying the appropriate disposal taxes. When police checked Barry's car, his tale fell apart. A day after Susan vanished, a coworker noticed a strong chlorine and bleach odor in Barry's hotel room. In addition, the detectives found that Barry had changed his clothes several times during the day. Despite how harmful Barry's activities appeared, detectives had not seen a motive. Like they were perfect, right? What could be his reason for wanting to harm his wife? That changed when they looked deeper into their personal lives. The daughter of Barry and Suzanne disclosed that they were not precisely as happy as Barry would have the police think. When they found Suzanne's phone and personal letters, they found text messages that showed a troubled marriage. The case now went in a different direction. Throughout the investigation, a deeper exploration of the Morphew's private life reveals secrets and tears apart the house's flawless exterior. The personal lives of the couple. It would be an understatement to say that they were having marital issues. She expressed her extreme dissatisfaction with the union and mentioned that her husband would not even entertain the possibility of a divorce. She kept a series of complaints in her notes app, which revealed a pattern of physical abuse. Suzanne went on to say that she was terrified to be in a room by herself with him. She also expressed concern about his drinking, his persistent efforts to take her phone, and her suspicions that he was cheating on her. Susan had bought a pen to catch her husband in the ACT, and when the police raided the Morphew's home on May 23rd, they found it. Surprisingly, it captured her affair rather than his. Suzanne attended high school with a man named Jeff, who turned out to be her lover. The claimed affair began in 2018 and continued for a total of 12 years. Even though Jeff seemed like an apparent suspect, the police were able to pardon him. A note Suzanne penned 2 days before she vanished supported the investigators' suspicion that Barry had somehow learned about the affair. Barry had claimed she was dating someone. Though helpful, the spy pen wasn't their only important discovery while investigating the Morphew's home. They discovered a spent bullet casing in the bedroom, a sizable fissure in the doorframe, the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the family's dryer, and what they thought to be the remains of Susan's journal in the fireplace. All of these conclusions, along with the telematic data, point to the possibility that Barry plotted his wife's murder and carried it out sometime on May 9, 2020, in the afternoon. Concurrently, Suzanne's phone data supported that account. She never used it again after emailing her boyfriend a selfie at about 2:10 p.m. and texting him 53 times. The public was not made aware that Barry was a suspect in his wife's abduction until 2 weeks later, during a 2-day excavation by the police of one of Barry's work sites, a building site in Sala. Barry responded by announcing his innocence in a peculiar video that he made public.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back.
It took until May 5, 2021, over a year after the inquiry started, for Barry Morphew to be taken into custody. Even though the evidence against Barry was at best circumstantial, the prosecution looked confident in their case because of Barry's frequent lying, shifting accounts, and obvious motivation. The verdict. Barry was accused of killing his wife in the first degree, tampering with tangible evidence, carrying a weapon that could be harmful, and trying to sway a public official. And as if that wasn't awful enough, Barry was also accused of using Suzanne's identity to file a forged election ballot. He insisted that Trump could use the additional vote, but he was unaware that it was improper. Man, that was insane. Why didn't you use your identity? In August 2021, Barry entered a guilty plea to the case and settled with a $600 fine. Most of the case details were public during a preliminary hearing to determine whether Barry Morphew's case would proceed to trial. The prosecution gradually presented the evidence over 4 days, conjecturing possible outcomes. On May 9, 2020, Barry killed his wife, cut up her body in a hotel room, threw away the tools, and buried her in an unmarked grave. But Barry's defense resisted strongly, exposing gaps in the prosecution's narrative. They cited the lack of evidence found by cadaver dogs in Barry's car and the hotel room, where he is said to have carried her body. Additionally, they suggested that the bullet cover may have been planted because there were differences in the dryer's appearance in the photos. In one, it was evident that the cap was in the dryer. In the other, it was not. The defense further claimed that because Barry's black pistol was damaged at the time of the alleged murder, he could not have used it to assist in the crime. The defense team's smoking gun, however, was the fragment of DNA they found on Susan's cycling helmet and in her Range Rover, none of which matched Barry. What made the discovery such a big deal? There is a reasonable doubt because the DNA found in her car appears to match the samples from 3 pending sexual assault investigations in Arizona and Chicago. Why was this not brought up earlier? A twisted fate of event. Before he could follow up on the lead, the CBI inspector who gathered the material was placed on military leave. Even worse, the defense was never aware of foreign DNA matches. During that hearing, they first learned of it, which means that the prosecution concealed evidence that may have helped the defense. Throughout the hearing, the defense maintained that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence to establish Barry's guilt for killing his wife because there was another suspect who had a criminal history. The court was requested to make a ruling swiftly, but strangely, he took his time, emphasizing the hundreds of person-hours and resources that went into the case. The judge did not decide to proceed with the lawsuit and put Barry's bail at $500,000 till September 7th. On September 23, 2021, Barry and his daughters were released from the county jail. The prosecution submitted a move to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice 9 days before the start of the trial. This implies that the prosecution may reopen the case if new information becomes available. It would have been difficult to prevail in the absence of a body of reasonable doubt over Barry's guilt for the murder. In addition, the prosecution violated multiple deadlines, which resulted in penalties that prevented 14 important witnesses from testifying at trial. When word of the dismissal spread throughout the world, people were shocked. Barry was spotted leaving the courthouse, grinning broadly and taking his 2 daughters. The remains of Suzanne. In Moffett, Colorado, on September 22, 2023, a team of detectives discovered multiple shallow graves. After a thorough examination, Susan's bones were found more than 50 miles from the planned search area, the mountains encircling Barry's property, together with her dental records and chemotherapy port. Many questioned whether Barry could still be officially regarded as a suspect in the murder when her body was found, given that the police are optimistic that Barry's vehicle was not in Moffett on May 9th and 10. Furthermore, this investigation underwent a 2-year campaign. More than 70 investigators put in 1,000 hours of work on Susan's case, 135 search warrants were granted, and more than 400 people were examined before the police felt comfortable accusing Barry of killing his wife in the first degree. Most people believed Barry was guilty even after the charges were withdrawn due to insufficient evidence and poor management. It has been noted by some that Barry may have gotten assistance in getting rid of her body and could have traveled to Moffett to bury the body before returning. Barry appears to be safe for the time being, but maybe they might connect him to the location where Susan's remains were found if they had access to his phone and vehicle data for a more extended amount of time. Still, the district attorney's office and police haven't given up yet. CNN was informed by the 12th Judicial District's attorney that the case was still being investigated and that she would not be able to comment until further details were available. They did, however, extend their sympathies to Suzanne's family. Barry's lawyer, Iris Aton, has been quite vocal since the body was found, implying that since Suzanne's bones were found in a graveyard, it's more possible that she was one of the many victims of a serial killer. She thinks that the police unfairly singled out Barry, and she hopes that, at some point, they will acknowledge their error. Meanwhile, Barry claims he was unfairly charged in the disappearance and death of his wife, and he has filed a $50 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and other investigators. This is indeed one of the most shocking cases, as there are still no suspects and criminals to pin on the death of Suzanne Morphew. We still hope and pray justice is made for Suzanne because she doesn't deserve such ill treatment as a human. In other words, the husband claimed to be innocent, but what do you think? Do you think he had a dark intention towards his wife, or was it just a random attack? Let us know in the comment section below. Have you been tricked on social media before? Check out our previous